Hello, and welcome to the Fallen Sun podcast. I'm your host, Tommy.
Along with me, Eli, and this episode will be about Japan and their part in the Industrial Revolution.
That's right. As the Industrial Revolution may have affected the Western nations more, the Japanese were still heavily affected.
We have special guests here who are experts on this time period for the Japanese, who will be talking about the social and political changes, as well as many other things.
This time period, from 1750 to 1900, was a rough time for the Japanese, as their country was changed so much from the Industrial Revolution. Things like social hierarchies and other political changes allowed Japan to become the country it is, or that they were in the 1900s.
We are joined by Eli Jennings and Jeremiah Smith, who are experts on political change. Eli, would you like to tell us more about it?
It's Eli Jennings here with Jeremiah Smith. Let's talk about politics during the Japanese Industrial Revolution. Honestly, I think the summary of this whole position is under leader Sojiro Honda. It was political chaos, and many argued against copying these Europeans and Americans and wishing to preserve the Japanese culture and the way of life. Throughout the mid 1860s, even a brief civil war broke out, and reformers for those who wanted a modernization in the style of the new Western nations won and took power.
All this information about the Japan is from the period about the 19th century to 20th century. So about 1945, the Allied occupation of Japan, the Democratic Party government restored. Women gained legal equality and right to vote. The enactment of the new democratic constitution transforms, making it truly a parliamentary state. With a peace treaty signed in 1951, Japan regains its independence.
I really loved that personally because I felt like it really led Japan into being a part of the new world and really just helping boost the whole world. And I think this is my favorite result of that whole time period.
Yes.
I mean, Japan's dramatic experience shift from conservative isolation policies and the shogun-dominated Edo period to the rapid and widespread drive to modernization and to engage with the rest of the world, which is characterized to the Meiji Restoration. During the first half of the century, decades of fiscal and social disruption caused the growth of the market economy, even the complex and monetary system in the country that is still officially based on agriculture to this day, which supports both farming and privilege, but the unproductive samurai classes continue to weaken the country in general.
Very true.
I can just say the goal of this whole time period was to promote the Industrial Revolution by cooperating closely with private firms. I think that's a good summary of the situation. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. Basically what happened back then. Among the widespread changes that went along with the industrialization were the development of infrastructure, modern banking, national mandatory education, and modern armed forces. In the process, the family modernized, established gender roles were questioned, and women entered the paid labor force. This is very good accomplishment for our society as a whole, as women now played a bigger part.
Honestly, Jeremiah, you couldn't have said that better. I completely agree with all those statements. And I think the discovery and research you've done have really found this. I mean, I'm looking at where you got this from, the Voices from the Past, the Human Cost of Japanese Modernization, 1880s. I mean, that was a great one to pull from. I feel like it really just described the political state, the industrial policy of Japan. I mean, even Japan 18 to 1900 AD, the timeline of art and history really just like it inspired me to do more research upon this. And I mean, personally, my favorite research you did was the Japanese history and Asian society. All those websites were amazing to help me further my knowledge in this. And honestly, I feel like this was a good talk amongst us. But let's send it back to the host.
How about that political chaos during that time? I love their plethora of research that Eli and Jeremiah did to allow us to be able to learn about Japan during that time. Now, on to one of our sponsors, Daimaru Japanese Steakhouse.
Daimaru is a local Japanese steakhouse who supports us throughout our research for these podcasts that we provide for the public. Having sponsors allows us to be more successful in our work. So thank you, Daimaru.
Love their sushi. Now on to our society and change experts, Allie and Connor.
Society, culture, and the Industrial Revolution, and the Meiji Restoration as a whole in Japan changed greatly during this period.
Before 1868, for about 7 centuries, Japan had been under the rule of the Tokugawa shoguns. Japan did have an emperor, but his rule was purely ceremonial. Shoguns were military leaders, some would say dictators, whose job was to maintain the stability and society in a certain territory. And after ridding the Japanese feudal system, they moved the imperial capital of Kyoto to Tokyo.
Along with strong waves of nationalism and unity throughout the country, with many adopting the slogan of "Enrich the country, strengthen the army," Fokoku Koyohai. The culture changed with the support of the army and universal conscription laws, changing in 1873. Japan's first Ministry of Education was established in 1871 to develop a national system of education. It led to the promulgation of Gakusei, or Education System Order, in 1872, and to the introduction of universal education in the country, which initially put emphasis on Western learning. With all of this, education of intellectuals and within the country, along with strong militarism throughout the country, led to massive waves of nationalism, many of which leading to the Japanese Empire later on. Along with Ichi Shibusawa, a great leader who created the modern Japanese financial system, Shibusawa also helped establish over 500 companies in many industries like the textiles, created railroads and steel, and contributing greatly to Japanese economic growth during the period.
He sounds like he did quite a bit for Japan.
He really did. I mean, he started up their entire infrastructure, leading to faster movements throughout the country with railroads and faster transportation of goods, which allowed trade to flee more freely from the Portuguese and other European powers trading with Japan. Because originally, they were isolationists. They didn't want anyone in here. And they started trading with the Portuguese, who gave them guns, which really led to probably the end of the feudal system.
That's pretty cool. Well, that's about all we have on the Industrial Revolution. Back to you, Tommy.
Nationalism spreading is one of the biggest parts to me. I really like all of the research that Connor and Allie did and how they explain their research well.
Now on to our next sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends.
Raid Shadow Legends is an easy and fun game to play.
Use code FSP to get 30% off your next in-game purchase.
What a great episode for today. We talked about Japan and how the Industrial Revolution affected it.
The Industrial Revolution heavily affected both the society and the political stance in the country, along with the changes that happened over time.
Thank you to the experts for coming to our podcast and teaching us more about Japan and how the Industrial Revolution affected them.
Thank you for tuning into the Falling Sun podcast. Have a great day.